All right, here's our last type of naming or nomenclature. We're going to learn how to name acids. Acids are solutions that can be recognized because they begin with the letter H. So let's learn how to name those. Those have yet another type of nomenclature system. There are two types of acids we're going to learn how to name. The first type are called binary acids. Binary acids are two-element acids, and you already know what one of them is going to be. One of the elements is going to be H. So here's how you name binary acids. The most common one that we're going to use is HCl. You may have used it in biology. I think we even used it this year in a lab. So here's how you would name it. You're going to add the prefix hydro, and then we're going to name this element. So that's chlorine, but we're going to change the suffix to ic. So instead of calling hydrochlorine, we're going to call hydrochloric acid. So here's our rule for naming binary acids. You're going to add the prefix hydro, name the element, but then change the suffix to ic. And it's really pretty that simple. HBr. You recognize it as an acid because it begins with H. And so we're going to start with hydro and add ic. So it's going to be hydrobromic acid, not hydrobromine acid. We're going to add the prefix hydro and the suffix ic. So let's have you go the other way. Let me give you a name and you write the formula. Hydrofluoric, watch your spelling of fluoric, acid. So the hydro tells you it's a binary acid. The fluoric tells you the other element is F. So you know it's got to have H. All acids have H. Fluoric is fluorine. So like writing any other compound, we have to make sure that the charges add up to 0. So if you look on your periodic table, hydrogen's right here, and it's a +1. Fluorine's over here, and it's a -1. I bet most of you have that written down. +1 and -1 add up to 0. So that's it. That's all you have to do. You are done naming or writing the formula for hydrofluoric acid. Okay? The other type of acid is called an oxyacid. So you kids are smart. I bet you can figure out what element is in oxyacids. It's got to have oxygen. So let me show you the most common oxyacid that we're going to see. Now, how do you kids know it's an acid? Well, because it begins with H, just like all the other ones did. But you see how it's not binary? See how it's got 3 elements? So here's how we would name this. The name of this acid is based on the name of this ion right here. I bet many of you know that this is called sulfate. If you don't, that's from page 169. What we do is if the polyatomic ion ends in 8, we change the 8 to an ic. You're like, huh? What does that mean? Well, let me just show you. This is called sulfuric acid. Notice we do not use hydro. All we do is we take the name of the polyatomic ion sulfate and we change the suffix to ic. 8 changes to ic. The way I remember that is I hate carrots. Sorry, I hate them. If I ate them, what would I say? Ick. I really don't like them. I'm 52 years old and I still don't want to eat them. I don't like them. So 8's changed to icks. Some of you are like, Lucky, where are you getting at? Well, we could also have another acid that's H2SO3. Notice it's very similar to H2SO4, except it's H2SO3, not H2SO4. We know it's an acid because it begins with H. So how do we name this one? Well, this name is based on this ion. This ion is called sulfite. Well, we got to have a different name because sulfite is different than sulfate. So the name of this one is called sulfurous acid. So what happens is the suffix "ite" gets changed to "us." And I don't have a very cute saying like I ate it and I said ick, but what helps me, and this works for me, is these are both pronouns, I and us. You know, they're pronouns, I, us, whatever. So to name oxyacids, you really need to know the name of the polyatomic ion in order to name that. So why don't you give this one a try? Why don't you pause the video and see if you can name H2CO3. All right, here's what H2CO3 is. Here's your logic. This is an acid, and it's an oxyacid. So that means you have to know the name of this ion right here. If you don't, you look on page 169. And this is called carbonate. For oxyacids, the 8 changes to ic. So we don't call it carbonate acid, we call it carbonic acid. Pattern, the 8 changes to ic. So you can see how critical it is. Here's another example of how critical it is that you know your polyatomic ions. Okay? So let me give you some practice here. I would like you to name HClO3 and HClO2. Go ahead and pause the video and name those two. All right, so you pause video, you gave it a shot. This ion is called chlorate. So since that's called chlorate, the 8 changes to ic. So this is chloric acid, like so. All right, this ion is called chlorite. Since that's chlorite, the ite changes to us. So again, this is chlorite, ite changes to us. This ion is called chlorate. The 8 changes to ic. I know that's kind of crazy, but that's how you name acids. So let's review. How do you know if it's an acid? It begins with H. If it's a binary acid, we use hydro and ic. If it's an oxyacid, notice we're not using hydro. Don't you dare call it hydrosulfuric acid. We only use hydro if it's 2 elements. If it's an oxyacid, you have to know the name of the polyatomic ion. Let's do one more. Let's have you go back the other way. Let me give you, nitric acid. And let's put a formula to that. Okay, nitric comes from nitrate. So you have to ask yourself, what is nitrate? Well, nitrate is NO3. And if you look on page 169, nitrate is a -1. So you need to stick an H on there for it to be an acid. We know that H's are +1 because of its location on the periodic table. Right here, it's a +1. And then you look at your charges, +1 and -1 add up to 0. And that's done. One last one as an example. Hydrosulfuric acid. Now here's your logic that should be going through your head. Hydro tells you that's only 2 elements. We know it's an acid because of the word there. You know one of the elements has to be H in order for it to be an acid. So what's the other element have to be? Well, it's got to be sulfur. So put an S there and then check your charges. We already know that H is a +1, So you ask yourself, what is sulfide's charge? Sulfide's right here. You should have a -2 written on your periodic table. So if that's a -2 and hydrogen's a +1, then it has to be H2S. And that's it. That's how you name acids. That's it. I'll see you on Wednesday. We'll do some more review.